so that people can relate.
We are live.
A very good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Meenakshi Tomar, faculty at Generalized Global Business School, and it is my pleasure to invite you all and welcome you all to this 8th Masterclass for the one-year Global MBA in Business Analytics. Today is one exciting session that I was looking forward to, future career pathways in business. Well, we all have a lot of questions, but time has now come to unveil the important parts, the importance of cybersecurity and artificial intelligence, as most of us do very clearly talk about. Why this topic was essential as theme for this masterclass? We need to understand that business analytics is not merely about reading certain parts of the curriculum, but it has more to do with how this curriculum is designed, why certain disciplines are picked up, and how these disciplines get relevant when you are on the job, right? Now, moving further, I am delighted to welcome Dr. Meera Sharma, CEO, Cissp, and Dr. Thomas Matthews, COO and Managing Partner, Cissp. I'm just going to take a moment to introduce both our guests to all of you here. With 20 years of cumulative experience in consulting, digital pedagogy, as well as researching and publishing in the area of cybersecurity, digital transformation, and artificial intelligence, Dr. Meera Sharma has established a cybersecurity and artificial intelligence company. Cissp, that is underpinned by scientific research and years of experience in the field. She's constantly researching new innovations and how they may be used to assist individuals and companies to better integrate with the online world in a safe and efficient manner. As a cybersecurity researcher, profiling hackers, examining facets of cybercrime, and the deep links to physical terrorism and the dark web, subsequently led her to complete a PhD on hackers, information systems area at the University of London. Talking about our other guest, Dr. Thomas Matthews, he has over 27 years of experience in strategic and operational management, organizational improvement, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and information technology across different industries. In addition, his insight has shed light on how technological innovations have created new challenges within cybersecurity and how they have evolved from a challenge that only concerns the information technology department to a concern that now involves non-IT professionals and the entirety of C-suite management. In his role as Cisp's COO, he is continuously conducting research to discover and develop strategies and artificial intelligence technologies that will enable businesses to anticipate challenges and innovations within business structures, technologies, and cybersecurities. Well, I am sure that after understanding the profiles of both our speakers, our participants who are live with us on YouTube will definitely gain a lot of wisdom on the theme that we have thought about for this masterclass. I now hand over this virtual dais to Dr. Meera Sharma and Dr. Thomas Matthews. We welcome you both, sir.
Thank you very much for these warm words of welcome and for this very lovely introduction. Both of us are very happy to be here. I'm going to start sharing my slides. I brought some slides along, and then we can start our conversation. Could you let me know if you can see all this?
We can see this.
Very nice. So before we start, I would like to give you a brief introduction about Cissp and what we do. So this talk is about future career pathways in business, and we're looking at this through the lens of cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. We decided to include a little bit of blockchain in this as well, because that's also one of the emerging technologies. So who are we? Who is Cissp? Well, we are an education and consulting organization. We started Cissp because, or Meera started Cissp, better put, because she was kind of fed up with the lack of education happening for business students in the area of cyber and artificial intelligence. And she thought she needed to do something in relation to that. Also, we noticed now through our own consulting practice that very few organizations are actually up to scratch when it comes to having an appropriate cybersecurity structure in place. And so we're trying to educate individuals and help organizations to get to a level where they can operate in secure ways. So we're based across the globe. We've got a business set up in the UK, that's our headquarter, and then we're doing business in the US, in Mexico, and in Dubai, and we're trying to encroach into India as well. We have partnered with the British Computing Society. So the British Computing Society is a chartered institute of IT, and their mission is to help individuals get to grips with digitalization and IT, and of course, cybersecurity. We're also a Crown commercial service supplier, which enables us to work with different organizations at state level, and we are working closely with the Department of Trade. Without further ado, let's start our little conversation about this. Well, before we do, I briefly would like to introduce Cissp Academy. The Cissp Academy is a fusion between theory and practice. So we teach, we offer certificates in various elements regarding to cybersecurity, blockchain, and artificial intelligence. At the same time, we're offering boot camps to manifest the theory we've taught in a more practical setting. So all of us have experienced large levels of digitalization, and essentially the perception of how organizations run, they are melting essentially away, because digitalization is everywhere. It has skyrocketed over the last few years, especially when it comes to COVID. COVID has in fact accelerated digitalization, and large parts of society are essentially drawn now towards using different devices, whether that's in our personal life or whether that's in our business life, or whether we bring personal devices into our business environment. And that happens across industries, that happens across different functional areas, right? And that essentially will, shake up the way we organize ourselves. It will shake up the way jobs are being designed. It will have an impact on wages. It will have an impact on health, and it will have an impact on security, very importantly. Now, as this talk is about career paths or career pathways, by looking at this through the lens of an MBA in analytics, my view is, and Mira may share this view, or she may deviate a little bit from that, and that's fine. But my view in terms of career paths here is that it depends on where you're coming from, right? Because the technologies we're going to be talking about, they can become very sophisticated. And if you have a background in these technologies, then there may be a very specific career path you could pursue. Whereas if you don't have a specific background, let's say in artificial intelligence or in cybersecurity, it may be difficult, but the key takeaway then is to become a multi-skilled and omni-technology aware MBA, because that's what the future holds, because all organizations need to innovate at this particular level. Now, if we're looking at what digital adoption means in the Indian context, to frame this a bit further, then up until 2007, so that's the left part of the slide here, digital adoption in India was quite weak based on this research. It was at 32% nowadays. So in 2020, this has increased up to 53%. And given what happened over the last few years, I'm sure we're looking at an even higher number in 2022. Now, the good news is if when we're looking at the right side of this graph, then we're seeing the growth in digital adoption is massive in India. So up until 2017, we were looking at 90%. Given that we're in 2022 already, the adoption rate is very likely to be a lot higher already. Now, in which industries is India becoming more digital? That's really a key thing for carving out a career, or for thinking about, well, which area would I like to focus on from a career perspective? And there are a number of areas that are important. So the most important area, according to this research, for India seems to be the financial services sector, it seems to be growing massively. Then the second and third areas seem to be job skills, so human resources, and in generally technological skills, as well as agriculture. And then the third area is education, also growing quite massively. And then we have a smaller share in logistics and retailing, where these emerging technologies help or require digital upgrading. So we can say that overall, we're looking at an almost doubling of the digital sectors here in India, which is quite phenomenal and provides lots of opportunities. And we'll talk about some of these opportunities in a second. Now, it's important to look at this also from a competitive advantage perspective. So the laggards are the organizations presented with the dark boxes, more towards the left, and the more innovative organizations, they're presented by the white graphs. And they are the leaders, they're essentially outperforming organizations who are not thinking or not incorporating any form of digitalization. So changing the core operations to respond to digital disruption seems to be key, right? And we know that AI and various other techniques can help us to do that. And then another key ingredient seems to be here to have a centralized digital team. And then finally, to invest a little bit into CRM software to be more at the front end of what our customers essentially want. Now, where are these jobs? Where is value then created in the Indian digital economy? So there are a number of new jobs. We're looking at about 65 million new jobs associated with digital technologies. And then we're looking at about 45 million jobs where new technologies are going to change the way we currently work in a particular area, in a particular functional area. So roughly 110 million jobs. Now, what are the important areas where digital jobs will be enabled through digitalization or through new technology? Well, clearly it's cybersecurity from an innovation perspective, but also from a cost reduction perspective. That's very important. But then also IoT and the use of AI experts, just to mention this. And then at the bottom, we also have the introduction of physical cyber systems or Industry 4.0 into manufacturing environments and the use of automation. So we need to retrain, we need to adopt these technologies in these areas. And so that seems to be creating a lot of value, apart from many other things which I mentioned here on the slide. Now, what do organizations do essentially, and which areas do they focus on when it comes to technology adoption? This is a global thing. This is also specific to India, I have to say, but cloud computing is number one. But then we also have a lot of encryption and cybersecurity happening. So this is what organizations do currently in India. Then obviously the Internet of Things, big data analytics. And then towards the bottom, we're looking at distributed ledger technology. So blockchain is also being adopted by organizations in different industries, right? So that already gives us an indication of, well, what do we need to focus on maybe if we wanted to carve out a career path with an MBA and then having a shift towards a more technological role. Now then, as we know, there are quite a few job roles that are going to be affected by these new technologies. And so on the left, so the blue line or the blue graph indicates which jobs will be emerging. So clearly AI and machine learning specialists. But then at number 3, we see cyber information security analysts, also very important. And then we also have fintech engineers. And then at number 10, we have business development professionals. So that's also important because of digitalization enabling new business models that will emerge. And these business models, they have to be applied in a physical context. They also have to be sold to customers and suppliers, right? So that's these roles seem to be very important. Now, there are unfortunately a few roles which are likely to be less important. And these have to do with administrative, secretarial roles, assembly, factory workers, accounting, bookkeeping, right? That seems to be problematic. We've recently spoken to a taxation company, and they do everything digitally now. They used to have things sent by their customers to them in hard copy format, whether it's accounts or whether it's any form of tax receipts. nowadays everything is done online, is done digitally through these guys. And they've managed to do that by using AI, for example. And so there are a number of roles, the manual labor roles, which are unfortunately going to disappear. Now, things are not so easy, unfortunately, because there are a number of barriers that hold India back from really pursuing digital innovation at the forefront. And there's simply a skills gap in the labor market. So individuals know that, well, we need to do something in the digital space, but they haven't had the time or the ability or the finances to really get to grips with that. Then there's also the inability to attract specialized talent. So for example, if you wanted to recruit somebody in cybersecurity and pay that individual an adequate salary, you're looking at a very, very high performance player, but it's very difficult to find these individuals in the market at the moment because there's a lot of demand. This is another surprising one. So we've done workshops with different executives in different industries, for example, education, healthcare, energy, and we identified a skills gap among organizational leaders. So they don't know, well, what should we focus on, right? And so that is essentially an ideal opportunity for somebody with an MBA in analytics, because you've already covered one important area, but to see, well, what other technologies are out there and which technologies do I need to actually focus on, right? And so the number 3 essentially leads to an insufficient understanding of opportunities, because all of us know these technologies exist, but which ones are the best really for my business, right? And so these are some of the barriers that seem to hold organizations back. So then what are the expectations of how to remedy this? So one of the expectations is that, well, we expect existing employees to pick up these skills on the job. So it's part-time study, right? It's also about retraining individual employees if there's a particular need there in relation to a particular technology. Then obviously hiring permanent staff. But then number 5 is about hiring temporary staff. So let's say an organization is very much out of its depth when it comes to cybersecurity. Then one of the services we offer as Cissp is that we put an interim Chief Information Security Officer in place. So that means the organization can learn from that person and then upgrade based on whatever knowledge this individual can inject in this organization. So this is already giving us a hint that, well, we need to upskill in the various technologies that exist. So we've had a look at the partners, so the Jindal Global Business School connects, right? And essentially you're covering every industry. You're covering healthcare, you're covering consulting, you're covering manufacturing, you're covering food, all these areas. But what do these organizational areas actually have in common, right? And it's very simple. We're looking at innovation. We're looking at innovation because cyber attacks are increasing. There are many areas in which this is happening. Most organizations, and I'll give you examples of that in a second, are using some form of AI or should be using some form of AI. Then there is a larger exposure to IoT and, of course, blockchain, right? And so these are some of the things they need to consider. Another commonality is that what happens if you don't digitalize? So if you're not coming to digitalization, digitalization is going to pay you a visit. And if digitalization pays you a visit, that may likely be the more uncomfortable pathway. So the question now is, well, in which areas can we carve out a career pathway or upskill that leads to value creation based on the previous statistics we've just looked at? So the first area to look at is information and cybersecurity. So what is information security? Information security is the broader area we can look at. It's about the kind of controls, it's about the policies and procedures and standards we're using in our organizations, and maybe supply chains to protect our organization from a confidentiality perspective, from an availability perspective. Are the systems, is whatever we're using, is this available, and integrity? So can our data be fiddled with? And then the more technical area there is cybersecurity. So here we're looking at the technical controls, whether it's from a network perspective, from an internet perspective, or from an application perspective, because we know employees bring their IoT devices to work. So then, therefore, we need cybersecurity. Now, why is this important? organizations get hacked left, right, and center. One of the examples I identified was a nuclear power plant in Tamil Nadu. This organization got hacked because an employee brought a maliciously infected device to work, which then got hooked up to the network. This can happen to anybody, right? And the stories, if you look this up, the stories of how and why this happened, they have, of course, a political dimension, because many organizations, not just in India, but many organizations don't want to be caught and, oh, well, we kind of jeopardized our integrity in relation to cyber. So that's the first area of innovation that seems to be important. The second area of innovation has to do with artificial intelligence. So all of us know what artificial intelligence is. It's about looking at unstructured and structured data in a new way, maybe in a more sophisticated way, maybe in a faster way, because now we also have the machine power to kind of identify which data is useful, not useful. We can conduct better analyses, right? And then that is combined with, well, we can make better decisions. But that is also then influenced by machine learning, machine reasoning, and robotics. And this is essentially the intersection of, well, machine learning or AI with the Internet of Things. So then we're talking about cyber physical systems. So an example of how artificial intelligence can essentially support finance has to do with algorithms for risk assessment, right? It can help in fraud detection, fraud prevention. It can help in credit decisions that are being made by banks, for example. Then for HR, if you're an MBA with a focus on analytics and HR, then algorithms exist that scan resumes for certain traits that a particular individual needs to have. It's also about predicting whether an employee is very likely to leave your organization based on the parameters available that this person reflects. Then from an agricultural perspective, some of you might be working in an agricultural role. We can look into intelligent spraying of our crops, right? Are we using too much fertilizer? Are we not using enough? And then it's about crop monitoring and soil monitoring as well. That can be done through AI. And then automatic weeding, right? So when do we need to go through weeding processes? Do we do it manually, or do we have the support of AI? And finally, we also have innovation here from an artificial intelligence perspective happening in logistics, which has to do with autonomous vehicles, automatic warehousing, and predictive analytics, right? So essentially, what I'm saying is AI is everywhere. Whether we're looking at nuclear power plants, whether we're looking at utilities, the water mixture, that our water is clean, that may be calculated via artificial intelligence, whether we're looking at communication satellites, or whether we're looking at the stock market. AI is simply everywhere. So another component which is important and ties in with AI to some extent is the Internet of Things, right? So all of us, or many of us, may be using telemedicine, especially in the times of COVID. We had to hook up to hospitals by using the computer, right? We have smart consumers. We have smart thermostat. We have smoke detectors. We have smart refrigerators. Some of you may have that, right? And then also, if we look at this from an infrastructure perspective, so these things are happening. We're looking at smart buildings. We're looking at smart cities. We need to be aware of this as managers. Now, to give you an example in relation to smart cities and smart buildings, the other week we've had a conversation with an Irish smart city consortium. And these individuals, they know, because of all the technology we put in buildings, we put in cities now, and because of the data that needs to be managed, these buildings and cities are at risk from a cybersecurity perspective. The problem is they do not know how to manage the data volume and how to secure these cities, right? And so IoT becomes a very important thing. Now, from a manufacturing perspective, this is also very problematic. So the red bubbles you see here, they are essentially highlighting sensors that are attached to machines, maybe to humans, maybe to smaller devices, also IoT. And these sensors, they transfer information maybe within the manufacturing environment, or maybe from the manufacturing environment on the left to the global operations, more on the right of the slide, or maybe just to the customer side, or maybe to the intermediary by transferring this information to third-party logistics. Right now, from a cybersecurity perspective, many of these devices, they are not secure. That's the problem. So we need to be aware of that when we make these kind of purchasing decisions. Now, finally, we have blockchain as one of the new technologies, and blockchain is simply a way of recording transactions. And these transactions cannot be fiddled with because we have hashing algorithms in place. To give you an example here, we have different individuals here. We have Sally, who sends you a bit of Bitcoin. Then we have Bob, who also sends Joe a little bit of Bitcoin. And then we have Mark, who sends Tammy some Bitcoin. These transactions are then validated, and we're creating a block. And this block is then connected to another block and cannot be altered. And that's blockchain. Now, there are various examples that exist in different industries. And so, for example, if we look at financial services, then blockchains are used to validate transactions, whether these are global banking transactions or national banking transactions, right? Then from a supply chain and from a logistics perspective, this is about peer-to-peer transactions. So to make the supply chain a bit more transparent in terms of, well, where does our food really come from? Is it horse meat that we're consuming, or is it something? Is it the chicken that we ordered? Where is the transparency in the supply chain? And blockchain helps us to do that. And then the same thing, something similar applies to agriculture, where farmers do not need to go through intermediaries to obtain their payment. They can obtain the payment directly from their customers, hence cutting out the intermediary, hence making things more efficient. Now, why is all of this important, right? So we've said that, well, there are lots of opportunities here. So the future of organizations is going to be influenced by the Internet of Things. It's already there. It's going to be influenced by artificial intelligence. And the thing we haven't talked about is quantum computing. Now, quantum computing, just to give you this in a nutshell, has to do with making very complex calculations and performing these complex calculations faster. So we're discarding mathematical principles and we're moving more towards the principles of physics to get to grips with very complex problems. Now, because of this emergence of the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and quantum computing, there are problems associated with that, which leads to risk. Now, the risks have to do with, for example, artificial intelligence, that many organizations buy artificial intelligence ever more off the shelf. But do they really know what they're buying? Do they really know that the algorithms that were developed are based on really good data? Are these algorithms secure? Are the models secure, or have they been fiddled with in the past? Right? And then I've already mentioned that the Internet of Things is a bit of a problem in terms of the security associated with that. Now, another thing that becomes more important there, or it's already happening there, is that we are processing ever more data. Now, the question is, are we processing ever more sensitive data? If you think about healthcare providers, now all of this leads to an increased level of risk. So this risk is essentially inherent within your organization, but it is also external. So if you think about your supply chain, you might be using suppliers who may not be up to speed in terms of, well, AI, the Internet of Things, their cybersecurity posture, right? And all of this makes it very difficult for MBAs and executive roles to calibrate how much money do we need to allocate in, well, future technologies, but also in keeping future technologies secure. Now, what can we do? Essentially, we can upskill. So why would we upskill in relation to cybersecurity? Well, given that cybersecurity can be a very complex field, it is unlikely that you'll be pursuing, unless you have a background in cybersecurity and then topped up with an MBA, but it is very unlikely that you're pursuing a pure cybersecurity role. But you can demonstrate awareness to your employer. You can demonstrate that you know what you're on about in terms of cybersecurity, and that you can protect your organization as being part of the human firewall. Now, this, if you do that, that also draws less attention to you. One of our clients, he set up this Cybersecurity Hall of Fame. So this is essentially like the Employee of the Month scenario, where if you do a good job as an Employee of the Month, you're being rewarded. However, in this case, it works the other way around. You've been clicking on the wrong items for too many times, and that's why you're getting the Dunce's Prize here. Then it's also about personal protection, right? At home and at work, because all of us work more from home. We connect our home devices to work environments. That can be problematic, right? And we can also make more informed decisions in relation to that. Finally, in some countries, I wasn't able to find anything in relation to India, but in some countries we have GDPR, and what I read is that by 2023, 75% of the planet are going to be using some form of GDPR, so data privacy and protection law. And this indicates that heads of organizations are essentially liable. In some countries, they have to pay fines. In other countries, they have to pay a fine and go to jail. Now, this may trickle down to mid-level managers. So this is the reason of why you would upskill in cybersecurity. Why would you upskill in AI? Well, you could support your functional areas, so whether it's in HR, whether it's in marketing, whether it's in supply chain or operations, right? And essentially, if you know about AI, you can also make better AI decisions for the different types of tools that are available for your business, right? And finally, if you can demonstrate, well, I know something about AI besides my MBA knowledge, besides my business analytics knowledge, then you might be exposed to new and interesting projects. And finally, we have blockchain, right? This is also about gaining a competitive advantage for your organization, and something similar applies, right? So if you're educated in blockchain, you might find different or new opportunities to make your organization better or reduce cost. That was my part now, and I'm handing over to Mira Sama, our CEO from Cissp, and she will share some insights in terms of specific roles you could possibly pursue, and she will share of how we can help you.
Thank you for that, Thomas. I found that really interesting, actually, and I hope the audience does too. So I'm going to talk about, start with this little video on bridging the digital divide, and then we go a bit more into the kind of existing MBA programs, looking at the future of MBA, and starting to talk about what can be done. How do we deep dive into getting upskilling, right? So if you don't mind, Thomas, could you start the video, please?
Yes, just a second. I need to share another screen.
We are creating a divide in our society between those who are part of the new economy and those who are not able to join in.
What we learned from past episodes of technological change is a lot of jobs being replaced by technology, but the long-term benefits for the next generations can be immense.
It's really important that people are open to want to learn. They're open to being upskilled themselves, because the reality is what we don't want is to leave a whole swathe of society behind.
It's not a training expense anymore. It's an investment for the future.
Upskilling is a global issue because technology is pervasive. It just turns out it's slightly different from place to place.
Everybody is affected by this transformation. Therefore, we have to work out a strategy.
If we embrace upskilling, if we take ownership for ourselves, I do think we can write the narrative for what the future looks like.
Okay, thanks for that, Thomas. So I think the key message here, and I spend a lot of my time talking to governments in my role with the UK Parliamentary Office. We have discussions around the importance of AI, cyber, quantum that is actually coming through right now. What is very clear, and this is from this message that we've just seen, is it's very unfortunate, but there is going to be sort of a different curve that we will see going forward, where you have, if you don't merge the technology with MBA, with this sort of generic skills that you have, people will be left behind. So there's almost an inverted curve where you have highly paid jobs. We're talking about huge salary differences between now and what you will see in about 2 or 3 years' time, where if you have the right skills, you can command top dollar. But then a lot of people will be left behind if you don't have those skills. So you have a large population at the bottom, and then you have the sort of a pyramid style where you have fewer people at the top but earning a lot more. We don't want students like yourselves to be at the bottom. We want you to be in the top 1%. So how do you get that? The next slide, please, Thomas. Thank you. So what do you study in generalized MBA programs? You're looking at very broad knowledge that is coming through on retail management, operations, HR, You study everything. You understand bits of everything, which is great because you get a very holistic bird's eye view on the different functionalities and operations that make up different aspects of management. So you do finance, international business. I'm sure you must have a module somewhere on AI. You must have a module, somewhere on cyber. But is that sufficient? In our view, what we would actually propose, and based on what we're seeing in the industry, is taking a slightly different view on upskilling. A module is insufficient. You need a lot more than that. Next slide, please. So here are some changing futuristic trends, and these are things that we are talking about in the UK right now. These are the discussions happening locally where we are based with the DIT. So we work very closely with the Department of Trade. We work with, like I said, Parliamentary Office. We are seeing a shift in jobs, and where are they moving towards? If you see some of the highlighted sections, the jobs are moving towards AI business development managers, for example. If you look at the lowest, the circled green bit, AI business development managers, for example, will be doing a lot of work in trying to understand where the business has to move and what kind of technologies, AI-led technologies, need to be incorporated. So a business development manager here will be doing a lot of work with sales and marketing teams, looking at the data at the back end, but making those very informed decisions. I can give you an example. When we had COVID, we had a meeting with about 50 or 60 Indian CEOs. It was a fantastic gathering. We had a 1-hour discussion with them. They were all, leading top-notch companies in India. And what did they tell us? The most important thing for them was automation. That was it. They said, we want automation. We want to see the right skills in our companies who can help us automate. So that means incorporating more of RPA. So what processes can be automated? How does that doesn't mean taking away jobs from people, but that just means that enhancing operations, but having the right people with the right skills supporting those operations going forward. So that's what an AI business development manager will do. You can also have other sort of roles looking at man-machine teaming manager. So essentially, how do you bring robotics and humans together? There have been a number of cases we have seen recently, at least in the UK, around rogue robots. Ocado had a recent problem where the robots were not operating properly. I think they had some sort of attacks, and things do not work well. So if you are, managing, people and machines, those kind of roles will become increasingly significant. You also have roles, as you can see in the top, corner there, augmented reality journey builders. So we know the importance of metaverse. Metaverse is here to stay. It's been picked up. I was in Dubai about 3 months ago, and there were a lot of conversations there in universities there about the huge impact that metaverse is having in the UAE right now. And we can see the trickling down to other countries as well. What will happen in these segments is you as MBAs can go out there and enable companies to understand how to make the best out of those kind of environments. How do they position themselves in the marketing, sales? How do they use augmented reality to get the best customer experience? What kind of vignettes should they use? How will that team up with sales, marketing, and lots of other functions? And that's where you all come in. So there are some very new, exciting roles coming up. The last one I'll mention is AI-assisted healthcare. I don't know if you all have noticed, but there are a lot more hospitals, at least in these markets, where we are right now, calling themselves as digital hospitals. Now, we are moving away from the traditional idea of what a hospital is. And because AI has come in, a lot of the initial analysis is being done by AI. A clear example would be looking at retinopathy. So if you have problems with diabetes, there are clinics now that just give you a camera, you just go home, you take a picture, and it'll tell you if you have diabetes or not. So a lot of it is shifting, and because of the shift with technology and healthcare, there are lots of opportunities down that road if you can upskill yourself sufficiently. Next slide, please. So what do we offer? The reason we have, there are lots of organizations out there, from CompTIA to EC Council, offering a range and swathes of programs. We, like the British Computing Society, because the British Computing Society is a charity, What they do is their main ideology is to get people to understand technology. No one is asking you to do coding. I mean, given that you're doing an MBA, that's not the expectation at all. But to understand technology enough to be able to integrate that with what you do is the key message here. So the key areas that we are seeing where there's growth, where there are opportunities and new jobs being created between now and the next 5 or 10 years are in these key areas that you can see below. It's IT, cybersecurity management, AI, that's no doubt. And I would say if you haven't done this, this should be mandatory actually, because there is no analytics anymore without AI. Blockchain, business analysis, and GDPR data protection. Because without data protection, you will be unlikely be trusted with the kind of data that you are likely to see. Thank you. So what will you learn if you were to do one of these programs? If you look at information and cybersecurity, if you look at the foundation program, you will learn what is cybersecurity, what are the management issues, what does risk management mean, what are the security standards, and how do you incorporate business continuity. If you do a practitioner certificate, which is one step up, you will get further understanding about risk management, security standards, etc. What kind of jobs could you be looking at if you do something like this? You can get into security management roles, and these are quite high-end roles. From what we're seeing, there are lots of jobs here that go unfilled because organizations don't get the right skills. They get people who code, but they don't get people who understand the management of cyber. So you can do policy analysis, you can look at understanding, compliance and operational risk. You can look at project managing individuals who sort of take on designing information security systems as well. You can also have certifications. There are also practitioner certifications that you can do in information architecture assurance, where you're describing and applying security design principles. You are looking at proposed architectures, countermeasures. And again, all of this is more around standards. There is no coding here. There is nothing for you to sit down and learn how to code, but it's more about understanding the applications of cyber. The kind of jobs that you could apply for when you do something like this is being a cybersecurity manager, looking at being an IT security analyst, because these are sort of broader roles that don't really need you to deep dive into protecting systems, but it's a step back and looking at it from a bird's eye view and trying to understand how do you, where is this field moving? What are the policies look like? What should be done? So you're taking a wider view, which fits in very nicely with an MBA program. Next slide, please. So AI, if you haven't done this, seriously, please consider this, whether it's with BCS or any other program. This is absolutely vital that this is done, not just as a module in your MBA program, but as a top-on, as an upskilling certification. Now, BCS Essential and Foundation Certificate, what does it do? It will give you a basic understanding of examples of AI, what are the benefits, challenges. It will introduce you to the concept of machine learning, and you will understand the future of AI. This is absolutely critical. What kind of jobs? There are a plethora of jobs in this right now, and all of it doesn't kind of require deep understanding of RPA. What it does is for you to, the kind of roles that you could look at are threat analyst, you can look at AI analyst, AI process automation designer. So you kind of go into organization and look at what are they doing, what are the existing processes, and how can you introduce automation. You won't be the person doing the automation, but you can tell the organizations how they can make those savings and in which part of the organizations they can make savings in. Thank you. And the salaries here are quite high. I can tell you that AI-based roles are in very high demand right now. The other, so you can look at the RPA developer, for example, will be paid between 60 and 300K. There are lots more roles coming around understanding how AI can be incorporated within businesses, especially around process automation. Thanks for that. So blockchain, so what can you learn under, again, this is critical, guys. We are working with, so Sistel has a partnership with a deep tech funding agency with an investment organization. We are looking to create a marketplace that is based on blockchain ourselves. And once we're getting into this, we now realize that most marketplaces are built on blockchain. So there is no getting away from this. And if you have an MBA, this again becomes vital that you do this. So the Essentials and Foundation Certificate in blockchain will tell you the basics, the fundamentals of what blockchain is, what is the structure of a blockchain network, what are the challenges, the risks, the use studies. So the use cases are really important here because it tells you the practical application of blockchain in businesses, which is what you want to know. How do you use blockchain technology in supporting people? What are the innovations using blockchain? This is the kind of knowledge, if you take to your organization, it will set you apart from the rest. So what kind of jobs will you get from this? You're going to be a blockchain analyst, a blockchain project manager, blockchain engineer. Of course, you will need to get more technically skilled in some of them, but the salaries are sky high for these kind of roles. Next slide, please. Okay, this one is a no-brainer, I think, because you are students of business analysis. You're doing a one-year MBA program. So this is key to sort of using this as an additional qualification and upskilling in this as well, because you're getting practitioner certifications alongside your MBA. Here you can try and look at the practitioner certificate in business analysis practice or business modeling processes. The kind of jobs that you would be looking at would be business analysis, business architecture, enterprise architecture. You can then apply for senior business analyst roles, especially if you do the BCS practitioner certificate in modeling business processes. All of these again have huge opportunities in this field, but requires a bit more focused certifications. That bit of upskilling that can get you those very targeted jobs, which is what we suggest to our students, is if you're going into the industry now saying I have an MBA, so I can get jobs, you have to be a lot more focused in what kind of areas of technology do you want to combine, what is your, with your MBA qualification, and that takes you down a different pathway, but there are lots of roles, so please do keep speaking to us. Next slide, please. I think between us, we have about 60 odd years of work experience, and as academics as well, we've seen a lot of students. We realize that we want to do something slightly different, use the knowledge that we have as Cissp, because we also do a fair bit of consulting, we do product development and education. We do believe that the key here is while you're upskilling, combine it with work experience. You need international work experience. I remember growing up in India, this was a long time ago, where if you met somebody who had been abroad, it was big news, and everybody on the street used to talk about it. And now when I go back to Bangalore, it's, everybody has traveled. So the world has suddenly become very, very small. Everybody has been to places. It's no longer a big deal to say, oh, that person down that street has been to the US. It's no big deal anymore. So now what has happened is having that international work experience to show that you have the caliber to work with people across countries has become key. This is extremely significant right now. So what we offer here as a part of Cissp, if this is of interest, is we combine all these upskilling programs with work experience bootcamp. So we would like to, to sort of encourage all the students listening in to start thinking about work experience from the time you start your program. The way we do this is we, kind of take on students, we take them through a consulting problem, and we get them to work on a consulting problem. So you have the first week, which is launch, you learn key aspects of consulting, then you learn and apply that understanding to a practical problem that we see in the consulting world. And then that's week 1 to 4. You will have one-to-one meetings, you can apply solutions to the problem, you can actually deliver the consulting presentation. And then beyond week 4, you can become a part of the alumni, you can build your networks, and you can get further advice on how to hone your skills using the kind of problem that you've been working on. So we do strongly encourage you to, get thinking about work experience and sort of maybe joining our work experience bootcamp journey. So what do you get? You will get a certificate of work experience with us. Essentially, you'll be working on a consulting problem, and if you can solve that problem and if you're able to present your work on it, you will get a consulting, work experience certificate from us, and we are a fairly international company. We are based in different parts of the world. It is time to level up. It's time to level up because the trends suggest that it's no longer sufficient to do generic programs. You need to sort of understand, pick core technologies that you find interesting and marry this up with your MBA. So whether it's business analytics, cybersecurity, blockchain, or AI, I think it's a deep dive is really, really important. Have a look at some of the programs that we offer at our Essentials Foundation. It's all BCS driven. We help you write the exam. The exam is set by the British Computing Society, so you have no control over it. We just prepare you to sort of field those questions and be able to take the exam. And the BCS will offer the certification to you. What are the benefits? It's you don't need coding. You don't need to be technically savvy. You can gain practical insights. There's a lot of lab work that you will go through. There's opportunity for work experience certifications. Get experience from an international company. You will get a 1-year free membership with British Computing Society, which I think is really useful. And the BCS themselves, they have a number of other career pathways that enables you to get visas to move to the UK as well. You can network with a community of 60,000 IT professionals and really widen those networks that you have. And we will also give you a lot more career advice. So what can we do now? Come and have a chat with us. If you didn't know, there's a 350% growth in cybersecurity AI roles. I sit in meetings with the UK government, and every week we hear that we don't have the right skills, that we need the right kind of people for the roles. In the UK, there are about 350,000 open roles, and these sort of roles are growing across the world. So there's a huge growth and there's a huge opportunity here. So do take advantage of this. We are on a mission. We want to change the way we do education. We want to upskill, and we don't think it's sufficient just to go somewhere to Udemy and get, and sort of just do very rapid qualifications. But I think what's really important is a deep dive. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Meera and Dr. Thomas. I must say that this has been one very informative session. I could deeply engage myself understanding the roles. I mean, I can definitely reconnect with you when you said that gone are the days when we should be dependent on a generic MBA, and it's time to upskill, and upskilling for the future is very essential. I really liked when you said that most of us would want to go overseas, we would want to work there. But what we lack is the understanding of what is required as a skill set in that market. So essentially, it's not just about we've done MBA from XYZ university or a reputed institution. That's not enough. What's more on the table is, do we understand what the industry wants or not? So I think you've definitely done a great job there. And many thanks to you for highlighting the kind of roles that the viewers today, many of them who could be aspirants to a business analytics role, can actually sense and get. Because this is one question that we keep on getting almost every day. What kind of roles can I think about myself? I have a few questions over here from the viewers. So the first question is that, are certifications independently fine and can promise a career, or should they be read as a part of detailed curriculum?
Thomas, you want to take?
I can take this one, yes. We've had a conversation with somebody else about this very question, and then it was a comparison of, so what if I get an MBA at Stanford? Can you guarantee me the job? Can you guarantee me the salary? And so I'm afraid there is no guarantee. There are no guarantees. What happens nowadays is that we need to prove ourselves as employees. So we've got to a certain level of education, and then we need to upskill. And this, because it also needs to be enjoyable. So if we have a particular interest, maybe in blockchain, maybe cybersecurity, maybe something completely different, but if it adds value to the organization based on the economic indicators I shared previously, then you are likely to get a job. Whereas if you're focusing on something idiosyncratic, which is not relevant to helping India grow, right, to the 105, 110 million jobs that are supposed to be created and change India, then that might be very difficult.
I'm just going to, thanks for that, Thomas. That was really useful. Just to add to that, actually, I think one could get a job. So let's assume you get a job guarantee, right? You could get a job and you could be asked to leave within a month. It means nothing anymore, right? So, what do you do with that? So job guarantee, essentially, there is no guarantee in this world because that company could go under or they could ask you to leave the next day, the minute you get the job. But what keeps you in the job are the skills you have, that you become so valuable to the organization that they need you to carry out operations. And that again means that you combine your existing knowledge with new knowledge and you're bringing something new to the table. You're being creative, you're being innovative in this.
Completely agree to that, Dr. Meena. So the next question that we have is, and this is a very interesting question, I must say. The candidate says that I am myself having a business and I'm coming out of my business to pursue this one-year MBA course. So you said that leadership shows resistance, and I have seen it happening in my organization too with respect to changing technologies. At Cissp, would you also suggest that we can think of any such certifications for our leaderships also, so that they are in sync with what new recruits bring as in terms of better skills?
The way I've understood the question is as follows. So, but a few years ago, at the start of the pandemic, we offered a training for executives. There were about, I think it was roughly 100 people who attended. We invited very famous hackers, so people who had hacked the CIA, the FBI. They had been to jail, right? But they've gone from the bad side to the good side. The other person hacked Facebook and there's a celebrity in the US, Kim Kardashian, that account was wiped clean. And so these people, they told us a story about, well, what's required and the skill set required for executives and why hackers are interested in organizations. And then at the end of the workshop, everybody had an opportunity to ask questions about cybersecurity and these sort of things. And then we said the same thing. So, listen, guys, if you have needs, because that was a consulting offer, please get in touch. We can help you. We can also help you train your staff. And everybody nodded and said, yeah. Now, yeah translated into many individuals not doing anything. And 3 months later, we received a phone call from one of the CEOs of the company and said, guys, we got hacked. Can you help us? We didn't do anything. Right? And then we're going in there. And so the idea is you would want to upskill because you don't know what's happening, right? There are so many different qualifications you can pursue, right? We've been in touch, for example, if you're looking at cybersecurity, we've been in touch with a Danish organization and they got hacked. And then the chief information officer made everybody in the IT department of that organization take the Cissp exam. Now, the Cissp exam is, some people call it the gold standard in cybersecurity. It's a 6-hour exam, 300 questions. It's massive. It's very difficult. And what happened? Everybody failed. So you don't want that. You would want to have a qualification you can pass. You would also want to see, well, do I really like cybersecurity? Have a dip into it. Have a look at this. Right? There's no need to prepare for a year for this kind of certificate. And then it's also looking at this from a perspective of, well, you don't need to be a cybersecurity specialist or an AI specialist, right? Even if when you're doing an MBA, you have certain specialisms in there, but you are not, that's my understanding, you might not be the absolute specialist, but you can communicate very well with a specialist. You understand the language, and that's what you want, because that enables better decision-making. It enables bringing your organization forward and maybe not losing any money, because well, are we buying this AI tool? Is it good? Is it useful for organization, or is it just hot because everybody else is buying that at the moment? So that's how I interpret the question.
No, I think that's a fantastic explanation that you give, and you're absolutely right. Most of us are so much infatuated with the processes available, but there are very few of us who would actually go up there, learn about it, learn the implementation, and would actually train the employees. How can it make their processes, their decision-making, and their own knowledge better? So absolutely in sync with what you just said. We have a last question there. It says that, so technology also keeps changing on a regular basis. Does it mean that the roles do also change? What is the job security in such cases? And how the system helps in pacing up with the technology changes?
So this is a very nice question. I like this very much, Mira. I would like to answer this.
Go for it.
So we are also constantly updating ourselves, because we know for example, from a cybersecurity perspective, that we're losing a battle, because the hackers, they have the motivation to maybe harm us as individuals and organizations, or to harm organizations, and they are constantly upskilling, and they do that because they like it. They're geeks. So, and they only need one right attempt, whereas we need to be right 100% of the time. Right. And so there is a need to constantly upskill. So what have we done in terms of upskilling? So we recently won a grant from Innovate UK. Innovate UK is a prestigious organization that awards research money. And the grant money was awarded for creating a clinic about cybersecurity for artificial intelligence and quantum computing. So, and that's an upgrade. So we had a pitch presentation about this a few weeks ago, and there was somebody from physics sitting in the panel. So it was an investment panel, and the person with a physics background, when we talked about quantum computing and how this could be problematic from a cybersecurity perspective, said to us, the organizations I've spoken with, and we've just read a government report from the UK government, they say quantum is not really relevant. And then we said, oh man, did we get the pitch wrong? And then 2 minutes later, that 2 minutes is a bit, but let's say a week later, there was an announcement made by British Telecommunication, Toshiba, and Ernst & Young that they are setting up a joint project to test quantum secure communication across offices of EY in London. And then we just had our next pitch, because you go through several rounds, so they test you whether you're good enough and whether you're doing whatever they want you to do. And then we presented that to them. Thankfully, it was a different panel, but also individuals who know, they don't know. It's nobody can predict the future. We delivered another presentation to designers, and somebody was asking me the question, so can you give me an exact number of years when quantum computing will be able to breach a particular type of encryption? And the answer is no, I cannot predict it, but we need to be prepared as organizational members to know about it and have the ear on the rail to kind of hear what's coming our direction. And that is really what we need to do. So we constantly need to upskill.
Can I just add to that? That was really useful, Thomas. And I just want to say, if you're asking about job security, I'm completely with the student, because if you have to constantly learn and you're going area to area and you're thinking, well, am I secure? Am I going to really secure? Have I done the right things? Have I now got a job where I'm okay for the next year, and something new comes along, I have to learn this again? That's actually a difficult question, because how do you make yourself invaluable to an organization? I would say it's through experience, because the tacit knowledge that's in you cannot be taken away. And organizations often struggle to find that same tacit knowledge. And how do you build that tacit knowledge? It's just not from going from the latest tech from one tech to the next, but it's in the application of it. So let's say you learn something, but you learn it well and you're able to apply it well, and the organization sees that. The tech can move on, but that you can do something well in what you have picked makes your tacit knowledge so valuable to the organization that they won't let you go. So that's my 2 cents worth on that.
And I think it completely makes sense. It's all about what kind of value addition is an individual able to make. And organizations would always care about people who value add instead of people who are too redundant and show resistance to change, resistance to technology, resistance to leadership, resistance to new ways of thinking. And while we talk about artificial intelligence, while we talk about cybersecurity, while we talk about machine learning, I think all of them are directly correlated to change. So if I have to use the word change, it's synonymous to all three. And therefore, we need to open up ourselves. We need to keep on upskilling ourselves. And what the presentation clearly showed us is that it's not about you just get certified once and you move on. Cissp is also continuously innovating. We're continuously researching. And therefore, it's very important for all of you out there to understand how Cissp is getting onto the right set of upskilling trainings and upskilling consulting that they are able to provide to young minds like you. And therefore, instead of thinking about job security, I think our focus should be, how can I make myself better? Once you are focused on how you can upskill yourself better with what the industry wants on a real-time basis, I think you don't even have to think about job security. Maybe you can just think of owning up your own business. And that's precisely what the government of India is talking about. We are high time talking about Make in India, Digital India. And as an Indian, we all know cybersecurity still remains an issue with us. We read a lot of cases every day. And therefore, we also know that these gaps are much prevalent in our economy. Therefore, it's high time for us as young generation to go out, think of how the other countries have already done a good job there, and how people are able to get secure jobs, which is focus on how you can add value to the organization.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. On that.
Manish, I just wanted to add one last point to what you just said, because for the last question, I would just say one thing. End of the day, humans make decisions, right? And a lot of these decisions are not quantitative. It's not about numbers. It's about how you come across all those tacit skills that you have. I'll just leave with the final point here. And so Cissp is connected with Nemesis Tech, which is a deep tech venture capital firm. I met the owner of the company. They have 800 million to spend in the next 4 years. And I said, how are you going to spend 800 million? And he said, you know how we spend it? We see if you like the people. It's not just about the idea. And I said, how do you make that idea? I mean, some of these investments are 40, 50, 60 million dollars. And I said, how will you actually invest that? And the only answer is, it's not quantitative, it's qualitative. It's based on the person, it's based on what they bring to the table. It's all of those other things apart from the technology itself.
Absolutely. And Dr. Meera, I would also like to add in here that even for intuitive decision making, which many of us do out here, you definitely rethink whether it's logical and whether it is making any sense or not. Because one wrong decision can cost you and one right decision can accelerate you. So it's all up to us. How do we do that? On that note, I, on behalf of Jindal Global Business School and OP Jindal Global University, extend gratitude to Dr. Meera Sharma and Dr. Thomas Matthews for giving us an insightful session. Ma'am and sir, this has been really wonderful session, which elaborated on the kind of roles, elaborated on the point of upskilling, why should one upskill, and how to upskill. It also gave us the food for thought to think about the areas where we can upskill, where we lag behind, and how we ensure that we are securing our skill set for the future and not just jobs. On that note, it will be our privilege to host you on our campus whenever you are paying a visit to India. It will be our utter delight to have both of you interacting with our students, interacting with faculty members, and we look forward to a very positive collaboration with Cissp. On that note, I also thank the viewers who joined us on a Saturday evening. As Dr. Meera said, Saturday evening, well, for us, after 2 years of COVID, it definitely makes a lot more meaningful to understand how we can cope up with what we've lost in the last 2 years, and how these 2 years have really driven us back in terms of economy, in terms of opportunities, and in terms of learning. Therefore, time is now to pull ourselves up and think and go and reach out to upskill ourselves. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's really, really enjoyable. And I'll definitely probably take you up on your offer. I haven't had North Indian food in a long time. So I think it makes sense to come to Haryana and Delhi just for that.
Absolutely, you must. And we will await to have you over here. Certainly.
Sounds good. Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Formally close now.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.